Hello and welcome to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, and real glad that you could join us for another segment. I'm going to be speaking with Dr. Jarrod Bailey. He's joining us here from the Center for Contemporary Sciences to talk about a new peer-reviewed report in BMJ Open Science that illustrates the exaggerated results of biomedical studies using animals. Welcome to the program, Dr. Jarrod Bailey. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, give us a bit of your professional background and talk about your role briefly there at the Center for Contemporary Sciences.
Happy to do that. I'll try and be as brief as I can. My background's in genetics, my PhD also in genetics, and then I spent 7 years researching premature birth in humans. Why do some women have premature babies that can have lifelong effects for those children? Is there a genetic pathway behind this? And it was during this 7 years that I really got an interest in the science behind why people used animal models, because I used human tissue and grew human cells in the lab to research this issue, and other people I knew used animal models, and they all produced very different, very conflicting data, and that really piqued an interest in me. So for the last 15 to 16 years or so, I've worked for various groups on both sides of the Atlantic, looking at this issue as a scientist, looking at the scientific validity or otherwise of using animals as models for human beings, for human biology, human diseases, to test new drugs, and so on and so forth. So this led to this, my most recent paper. I've published many papers over the years on very diverse areas of research and science and biomedical issues. This was my latest paper that was done before I joined the Center for Contemporary Sciences. It was done for Cruelty Free International. And we asked a very simple question. So given that there is increasing evidence questioning the human relevance of animal models in medical research, what is the state of play in the press? So we looked at the UK national media and looked at specific reports of animal-based biomedical breakthroughs. And we went right back to 1995, at the time, at the inception of this project, to give those breakthroughs 20 years to come to fruition, to translate to human benefit, which we thought was more than enough time, and asked that question: did these specific animal-based biomedical breakthroughs translate to human benefit 20 plus years later? And what we found, there were 27 different types of breakthrough reported in the UK national media, and only one of those 27 resulted in human benefit. 26 of them, even more than 20 years later, hadn't done so. And all of those animal-based breakthroughs were grossly exaggerated in the media. And what I mean by that is the scientists involved, or their institutions, sometimes the journals, sometimes the funders of that research, were making claims along the lines of, this breakthrough in animals means that we will have a cure for cancer in 2 or 3 years, or we'll have an HIV vaccine in 5 years. These were really specific, very, very speculative, very, very great exaggerations that just hadn't panned out. So that led us to concluding a couple of things. Firstly, this is in line with what we're seeing outside of our research in the scientific media and journals right across the board, that there are increasing doubts of the human relevance of animal models, that there's a lot of evidence suggesting that we really need to do something better, something else, which is where my new job with the Center for Contemporary Sciences comes in, where we're really making the case for doing human-specific research using human tissues and advanced human cell cultures and organoids and bodies on a chip and all sorts of amazing technologies that we can talk about briefly. And also that and I think this is a very important point, that when you, whether you're a scientist, a medical professional, or just a member of the public, when you're reading about animal-based breakthroughs in the media, you really need to question what you're reading, to critically appraise what you're looking at, and even to take it with a pinch of salt, because much more often than not, those animal-based breakthroughs are wildly exaggerated and they're not going to result in human benefit.
When a study is being contemplated and animals are going to be used, there are people who are funding the study. There's an institution that is going to provide the students, the labs. There are journals that are funded by the people that are funding the study. And when you say the media that isn't directly connected to the funding is simply reporting what it's told. As we used to call it, the industry rag is going to speak favorably of that which it funds, don't you think?
That's a really a very good point. One of the things I've been regularly asked is, well, are you blaming the media for this exaggeration? And I'm not really sure it's helpful to throw blame around. It's just important to report what you find and to ask what it means and whether you should change your behavior and things should be done differently. But it is true to say that it's really not the journalists' fault. They, as you said, they are just reporting what they are given, what the press releases say, what the scientists themselves and their colleagues at various institutions around the world, what they are saying when they're interviewed about this. So the exaggeration is coming from the scientists who did the research themselves, from their colleagues and peers in that type of research elsewhere, from the university departments that are issuing the press releases, from the funders of the research, from the publishers of the research. That's where the exaggeration is coming from. And I think it's really important, and thankfully there are some signs that this is already happening, that at least we're starting to see more and more caveats put in reports of animal research about the point that these may not even probably will not be relevant to human beings because these were findings in animals. These caveats really have to be out there and upfront so that people reading them don't end up with an impression that animal research is really very human relevant, is doing a great job, is resulting in all sorts of breakthroughs that will transpire very quickly in some instances to human benefit, because that really seems not to be the case.
I can remember a time when to have the ingredients, the nutritional value of certain foods on the package was unheard of. I mean, who did that? Now it's commonplace to not see that on a package, raises suspicion even in children. Would you say that across the board there would be a negative dollar sign attached to each caveat placed upon study results?
Well, I think that's a really good point. I think increasingly, and this is certainly my opinion, but one that I see in other people too. Increasingly, people are frustrated that they're not reading factual reports. They're reading reports that have been spun in one way or the other by people with vested interest in spinning
a commercial.
That report. Yeah, well, not always commercial. Sometimes it's a professional thing. It's a pride in your work. You want to make sure that your work is relevant and will be published and will be funded again and matters, and can result in some sort of change for the better. So it's really human nature that this sort of thing happens, but that doesn't excuse it. So I think what people want to see are the facts. We want to be in possession, and I liked your analogy of food labels. People just want to be in possession of all the facts. So if you read a food label and it's high in fat, it says it's high in fat, and you can at least know that and make a decision based on the information that's been put right in front of you. And I think that needs to happen really with animal research for two reasons. Firstly, there are around 200 million animals used in science every year around the world. And that, of course, it has huge welfare issues and ethical issues. That's the reason that consistently a huge proportion of the public, certainly in developed countries, oppose or feel very uneasy about animal research, even if, for the sake of argument, there is significant human benefit from it. So because of these costs, we need to make sure that we're in full possession of the facts to make an opinion. And this also brings into question another important issue, which is the opportunity cost of doing something that really doesn't seem to be working very well, for which there is actually very little scientific justification to do. Because every time an animal study is funded, and it takes lots of money, as I said, there are ethical and welfare issues, there is harm involved. We have to do a harm-benefit analysis to justify all of this. There is an opportunity cost. That is human-specific research that isn't being funded. So we're being led more and more often, I think, certainly with animal research, down dead ends, and we're being misled with reports of imminent human benefits that just aren't transpiring. It really does seem that better science could be done, human-specific science could be done with many of these amazing new advanced culture methods that I've mentioned. And every time we're doing animal research, we're not doing human research, and we're letting down people who are looking in to say, are you doing the best science you could possibly do? Where is our understanding of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's? Where are the new drugs, the new really effective drugs for cancer, and so on and so forth? And I think that's a really important point with regard to human ethics.
Well, I do appreciate you talking with us today. It does seem that when science and progress outweighs funding, maybe some actual progress will be made.
I think yes, that's certainly the hope. I think there is room for some real optimism. There are regular meetings of all sorts of groups and organisations around the world now. Even some of them have been very defensive of animal research in the past, that are looking ahead and that appreciate that there is a need to move away from using animal models because of the differences, the genetic differences between different species, and the failure largely of animal models to lead to better understanding of diseases and to lead to real, prediction of human safety of new drugs. There has to be something much better we can do. There is something much better we can do, even if it isn't perfect, and that is human-specific research. How can we make that shift? How can we achieve that sea change from using animals to keeping our focus from the beginning to end on human biology that will actually benefit the 200 million animals a year used in labs and human beings who are relying on better science for cures and treatments. It will benefit everybody involved. Everybody will be a winner. So there's a lot to take from that. This is happening. Lots of people are looking to try and make it happen more quickly. And if and when that happens, everybody will benefit.
Well, Doctor, give us a website where we can learn more.
Well, the study, as I said, was funded by the previous group that I worked with, Cruelty Free International. That's crueltyfreeinternational.org. And I now am currently with the Centre for Contemporary Sciences. That's centreforcontemporarysciences.org. That is focusing on these human-specific methods and trying to expedite a shift from animal-based science to human-based science.
Well, I appreciate you joining us here on Health Professional Radio this morning.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download it SoundCloud, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.